hello again. Listen, you're never going to guess where I am. Some of you may recognize what's going on behind me here. That is one of the wonders of the world, one of the 7 wonders of the world. That is the Iguazu Falls. That is Argentina. I'm standing in Brazil looking over into Argentina. And that falls, actually you cannot see it, starts over here, continues all the way along over there, and it continues actually further on that direction. It goes for 3 kilometers, 2 miles, this falls. It's considered to be the longest, widest fall in the world, and that's one reason why it's one of the wonders of the world. Now, it's I don't know whether or not it has as much water as the Niagara Falls. It reminds me of the Victoria Falls that we had in Zambia, but this is truly spectacular. You can hear it in the background. Pretty soon you'll see some boats come down here, and they go right up in under the falls. And if you ever are in Brazil, right next to Paraguay, right next to Argentina, Paraguay is that direction. This is Brazil, that's Argentina. And if you ever have a chance to come here, come and see these falls. Now, I use these beautiful spots to talk more about this book, the Qur'an. And we've been talking about this book, the Qur'an, looking at it internally, looking at some of the critical analysis of it, and we're going to continue to do that. And what we're going to do now is we're looking at whether or not this book is a universal book. Does it have universal application for today or any day or here or anywhere? And one of the things that we have concluded is that when it comes to certain ideas like women, and we're going to talk about women today, it is not applicable. Let me just I'm going to go through a number of verses. We're going to, in chapter 4 and in chapter 2. We're going to start with chapter 4, verse 3. That's Surah 4, ayah 3, which says very clearly that a man can have up to 4 wives. Now, when you stop and ask yourself, 4 wives, if he can afford it, the problem is, immediately you see that that's just not practical today. It's not really relevant for today, and certainly not for the West. I know Muslims have tried to come back to me and say that there are so many women that whose husband die in battle, and therefore they need to have other men who then take them on as wives. But folks, that's not practical unless they're in a context of war. More than that, there aren't too many women I know that would like to share their husband with other women. That's not one of the things that we saw in the Bible. It's very clear in Genesis 2 that there's to be 1 man and 1 wife for life. In 1 Timothy, it also is very clear that a leader of the church, anybody who's an elder, must also only have 1 wife. So thank God we have a corrective for that here. But we're talking about whether or not this is really applicable for the 20th century or for any century, whether it's applicable for here or anywhere. And I would suggest that chapter 4, verse 3 is not really applicable. If you go for a few verses later, you have verse 11. So chapter 4, verse 11, Surah 4, ayah 11, you then get to the verse that states that when a man or a father dies, the children that get the inheritance, the boy, male, gets twice the inheritance of the female. So in marriage, you see inequality vis-a-vis a husband with 3 wives. In death, you also see this same inequality, considering the young boy, the son, or the brother would get twice what the sister would get. And it's fascinating to me because many Muslims, when they try to defend that, they say, well, this is because certainly this has to do with the fact that men have to take care of their wives. They are the ones that are responsible for the children. That may be so in a Muslim context, but not in a Western context. In most of your Western countries, when there is a divorce, it's the mother that usually gets the child, because the mother is a lot more capable of raising a young infant and is much more capable of also engendering a child. So that's why it's important that we look at this in a context of today, modern day. That's not a very relevant verse, and there's inequality built into it. Considering the fact that this was written in the 7th century in an Arab context, I can understand why then it would be relevant, but not today, not in the 21st century. Continue a few verses on. So we're in chapter 4, and this video we're going to look at just chapter 4. You get another reference a few verses later in chapter 4, verse 24. There it says that it is okay to marry those whom your right hand possesseth. Your right hand is your battle hand. This is the one that you take to battle. That means, in other words, that means those who you own from the rewards of war. This is booty from war. Women, concubines, who you get from warfare. Those women, you can have as many as you want above and beyond the 4 that it refers to in verse 3. So here you have even more women, or you can have as many as you want, according to chapter 4, verse 24, concubinage, above and beyond the 4 wives. Then you get probably to one of the most difficult verses, just 10 verses later, in chapter 4, verse 34. In chapter 4, verse 34, it says that a man is a protector of women, but to those women who stand against their husband, in fact, maybe we should just read it. Chapter 4, verse 34. To those women who are the protectors and maintainers of women, because Allah has made one of them to excel the other, and because they spend on them and guard in their husband's absence what Allah orders them to guard. As to those women, it says, on whose part you see ill conduct, admonish them first. That means, no, you don't do it again. Just remonstrate with them. Next, it says, refuse to share their beds. So if they still don't obey, then throw them out of your bed. Now remember, in Islam, what is the whole role of women? Well, women really have 2 roles. One is to bear children, and the other is to take care of their husbands. So if you throw them from the bed, you have just eradicated one of their most important roles as a childbearing woman. That's pretty serious. And then thirdly, beat them. Now, in parentheses, it says in my Qur'an, lightly if it is useful. That is parentheses. They have to do that because there is no country in the world outside of Muslim countries that allows you to beat your wife. And the word is in Arabic is daraba. Daraba means to scourge, not to hit lightly. I've heard many Muslims say it's just like you take a toothpick and you beat them on the arm with a toothpick. If Muslims were to read that, interpret it that way, there's going to be a run on toothpicks. Certainly this has nothing to do with toothpicks. It does nothing to do with twigs. This has everything to do with beat them, scourge them like you would an animal. Now, I remember doing a debate a number of years ago at Cambridge University. And the fellow that I was debating, he said, well, Mr. Smith, don't worry, this is the last of 3. This is the one, the most serious of the 3, and you'll never really get to that point. But even so, he said, there are many women that love to be beaten. And I remember when he said that, you don't say something like that at Cambridge University. And there was a gasp from the crowd when he said that. And I remember at the end of that debate, at the Cambridge Union, you go out of one of 2 doors. Those who would go out with the proposition, which was my side of the debate, that Islam is not relevant for the West. Almost 400 went out to the door that my door proposition. Those who went out with the opposition, which was the Muslim that I was debating, only 6 or 7 went through his door, and that's how you score a debate at the end of the debate. And the reason he lost the debate was not because I was a better debater. The reason he lost the debate was because of that verse. It was that verse that he had to look at that suggested that a man can beat his wife, and when I interpreted and actually read the Arabic, and he had to acknowledge that this does mean to beat, not lightly. There's nothing lightly about it. The vast majority of people, in fact almost all those who were at the debate, sided with the proposition, sided with me. And it was not the man that lost the debate, it was this book that lost the debate. These are just 4 verses I'm going with to start this whole category here at Iqbal Surahs. We're going to continue with another area of Iqbal Surahs. We're going to continue and talk then about chapter 2, Surah 2, looking at verse 282, 223, and 230. But this is to begin this whole problem, asking this question: is Islam really relevant for the 21st century? Is it relevant for here? Is it relevant for where you are? When you're looking at women's context and see what this book says about women, And this is where Muslims have to go to find out what they're going to do, how they're going to act, how they're going to treat their wives. When you look at this book, when you look at what it says, just in chapter 4, you can see it's not relevant for here, it's not relevant for there, it's not relevant for anywhere. God bless you. What a place, what an enormous background. You can hear the falls, can't you? It's just delightful to be here at the Iguazu Falls, to be able to share this with you. Not the easiest material to work on, but certainly you can't get a better background, you can't get a better vista than here at Iguazu Falls. Okay, this is Jay, here at Iguazu.